Hello everyone, this is solaadio, and today we're going to build a Jenkins server. We're going to build a Jenkins server on Ubuntu, and we're going to set it up to perform some CI and CD for us. Essentially, we want to deploy a bunch of microservices onto Kubernetes. So what this build server is going to do for us is to perform the build, pull the source code from Git repository, and do a build for us, push the images into Azure Container Registry, and also deploy those images from Azure Container Registry into a Kubernetes AKS cluster running on Microsoft Azure. So that's what we're going to be doing today, and we're going to be building this server right from scratch, and also going to be building all our resources right from scratch. So come with me on this journey, and I'm sure we're going to learn a thing or two, and we're going to see the exciting outcome of CI and CD being performed on a Jenkins server and deploying microservices straight up right from Git straight up to an AKS cluster running on Azure. So let's get started. The first thing I want to do now, I'm going to be running. I'm going to be running two processes. I'm going to on Visual Studio Code. I'm going to create all the necessary Azure resources, and then on the portal, I'm going to build the Jenkins, build an Ubuntu instance with Jenkins pre-installed on it. So those two processes are going to run side by side just to save our time. But the first thing I'm going to do is set up my variables and do a login to be sure that we're into the right subscription. Yeah, so yeah, so that's done. Then the next thing we're going to do is set the subscription. Yeah, so that's done. And then I'm going to create the group. So the group is created. That's the result there. Now, after creating the group, there's one thing I'm going to do, which is to create a service principal. Now, we're going to need a service principal for the Jenkins build server. So we'll create a service principal. And what this service principal will do, it will return a bunch of items here, which we're going to copy across here because we're going to need it at some point. So my Jenkins service principal. So with all this done, let's now go to the portal. Let's go to the portal. Let's go to subscriptions. We'll pick the right subscription, and then we'll pick the resource groups. Yeah, and that's our new group, resource group. So it's empty, nothing there. So what we want to do is create deploy a virtual machine with Jenkins pre-installed on it. So we're going to pick this template here, Jenkins by Microsoft, and we're going to go on to create. So it's going to be an Ubuntu server with Jenkins pre-installed on it. So let's pick the right subscription, and then let's pick our Jenkins Azure. Yeah, the reason for that is to just help me in okay, we're going to pick SSH public key as well. We're not going to use a password. So West Europe, that's what we want. Let's give our Jenkins server a name. Let's call it Jenkins server. And now let's find a username. I'll call that my name. So we're using the SSH public key. Let's grab that. SSH. Yeah, I've got a key that I can use here. let's text edit, so I can grab the key from there. Right. So let's come over here. Yeah, so the key is in now. So Jenkins server, yeah, solaadio. Let me make a note of that. Jenkins server. So let's go to the additional settings. Yeah, so we will accept this default. So let's create a domain name. Let's call this yeah, I know that would have been taken up. All right, so okay, let me give you my name. Right, so the domain name label will be my name. So let's try that. And then let's go to the integration settings. Now for the Azure, for the service principal, we're now going to key in the application ID and the secret from the service principal that we created here. So that's the app ID here. We'll put that in here. And then for the secret, that will be the password. We'll put that in here. So that's the password. So it's going to deploy the Jenkins with this service principal, which, yeah. So let's review and create and see if it's going to validate. Oh yeah, validation passed. So we can go ahead and create. So it submitted it for deployment, and we'll leave that to chug away while we continue with creating our objects here. So the next thing we're going to do on this side is to create an Azure container registry. So let's go ahead with that. So we have a name ACR, which is ACR Jenkins Azure, and we've got a resource group, which is RG Jenkins Azure, and we have the location, which is West Europe, and also we're using QBasic. And the next thing we want to do is to create our Kubernetes cluster. Now we're going to need that same service principal again. So we get the app ID for the service principal and put it here. And then we get the password, which will be the secret. And we put that here. Yeah. So it's all fine now. Let me explain this to you. The location is West Europe. The name is the name of the cluster. This is the resource group. Generate SSH keys. Enable add-ons monitoring. Then this is the version of Kubernetes we're installing, 1.14.8. It's quite stable. We have a node count of 1. On production, it is advised that you go for like a node count of 3. We have a small VM size, standard underscore B2S, so it doesn't consume too much money. So I think we're ready to create our cluster now. So let's go. Yeah, so there it goes chugging away. This probably will keep busy for the next 10 minutes. And let's see how our Jenkins server is making progress. And that's going to be deployed on Ubuntu. Yeah, so it's running now. And so we've got 2 lengthy processes running at the moment. 2 lengthy processes running at the moment. So we're now going to check out. So while these 2 processes are running, we're going to keep busy by having a look at the applications and the microservices, the source code of the microservices that we want to deploy. So let's go to, yeah, so this is it here. Let's come over here. Okay, so this is the source code. This is the source code of the microservices that we want to deploy. So if you go into SRC, we have 5 applications here. 5 applications. One of them, the first one, is called check VAT ID. I use this to check VAT ID. Oh, and by the way, these 5 applications here are services that are actually live on Microsoft Azure. I actually use these services as a backend for my mobile app that runs on iOS. Let me show it to you. VAT Toolbox. Yeah, so you see, 4.8 rating, cost about 99p. Yeah, so that's the mobile app. So it does quite a number of things. It's a calculator. It stores VAT rates. So these VAT rates, they get pulled into the app from one of those services, get rates, and also what other thing? Okay, this is the rate version. This also gets pulled from the service. These also gets pulled from the service. And then I also have what you call a VAT number validator. Now this is running through one of those services as well, valid VAT number. So if you come over here, this is the service that is actually providing that functionality from the backend. So these are actually services running live. So what I did, they're all encapsulated in just one service on the live application. But what I did was to break them down into 5 smaller services, just to have a go at the microservice architecture. And what that gives us is you can redeploy this one without affecting any of these ones. You can deploy this one without affecting any of these other ones. So these are microservices running in their own space. So that gives us the flexibility where you can easily redeploy a service. You can change a service without introducing regression into any of the other services. So that is one benefit that the microservices architecture brings to you free of charge. One of the benefits. So that's the source code really. I've got a bunch of manifests here for the deployment. We'll go through these manifests very soon. And then there is a very important file here called the Jenkins file. Now the Jenkins file is a file of interest to the Jenkins build server. And what the build server will do is to pull this Jenkins file in, and this Jenkins file contains the pipeline. So there is a pipeline, a very long pipeline that I've got here with several stages, and we'll go through this. Now, first of all, you define a bunch of variables here. I defined 5 variables for the 5 services. Then this is the service principal ID, resource group, and then the name of the Kubernetes cluster, and then the address of the container registry, and then we derive this from the build number. So the first thing we do is to clone the repository. That's bring the repository down into the Jenkins server. And the next thing we'll do, we'll pick the first service and build it. So it builds it with this name, and then it's building it from this source code folder. So it's going to do the same thing for the second service, feedback, get rates Mongo, and get app info. And by the way, there was one other thing I implemented here. Get rates Mongo is an external facing service. Get rates is internal. So it means that it's deployed as a microservice, but it's not visible to external users. And this one calls this one. And both of them are load balanced as well. Let's check. Let's see what's going on. Oh, deployment is complete on the Jenkins server. And let's see what's going on over here. The Kubernetes is still, cluster creation is still running. So now that we have the server going, we have quite a lot of work to do on the server. So let's get on with it very quickly. So let's go to resource. And then let's go into the Jenkins server, this one. So the first thing we want to do is go into networking and enable port 8080. Port 8080 is very vital to the Jenkins server. So let's enable that. Okay, so, and let's go to overview here. So this is the public IP address of the server, but we're going to see something very interesting now. So let's try to log on to it. Now, straight away it tells us that it does not support us logging into it this way. And what it has done is it's provided us with an instruction here, which we're going to plunk into our terminal window. Let me just destroy this terminal and create another one. Okay, so we're going to plunk this instruction into the terminal window. Now it's replaced my username with a generic name here, so that just for security reasons. So here we go, and then say yes here, and boom, we're in the server. So we're actually on the Ubuntu server right now. So the way you then proceed, if you want to get into Jenkins, is to now do localhost 8080, and boom, that's your Jenkins server. So here now we are in the process. So we're going to copy this so we can get the initial password of the Jenkins server and do a setup. So sudo, I must not forget my sudo cat, then this. So that's the initial password. This one here. So put in this initial password here and then continue. So that's Jenkins unlocked. So install suggested plugins. So let's do that. In the meantime, let's see how we're getting on. Oh, Kubernetes is ready. Awesome. So the next thing we want to do is to grab the credentials for our Kubernetes. Overwrite, yes. Yes. So with that, we can run KubeCtl. See, that's KubeCtl running. So the next thing we want to do is to grab the ID of our Kubernetes cluster. So that's the ID. We also want to grab the ID of our container registry. That's the ID. And then we want to do a role assignment. Now, the essence of this role assignment is to grant the Kubernetes cluster contributor access into the container registry. Now, the purpose of that is when we're doing a deployment, when we issue an instruction to the Kubernetes cluster is going to use the service principal to talk to the container registry. And the container registry needs to be aware that the Kubernetes cluster is actually coming through to it using the service principal, and that's the purpose of this assignment. So that is assigned now. So the next thing we're going to do, okay, this one is ready. So let's put, so that's solaadio. Let me put a password here. Yeah, so start using Jenkins. So our Jenkins server is ready. We're still going to do some little setup here. Now let's come back over here to the dashboard, the portal. Now let's look for the container registry here. This is a container registry, and let's look at the permissions that have been assigned. Yeah, so my Jenkins service principal is assigned to this resource as contributor. So that was what we did. So it's assigned. And also as an overkill, what I tend to do, yeah, because I had some errors in times past. So what I tend to do is go to subscriptions, come over to the subscriptions here, access control, role assignment, and then I add a new role assignment. So I select the contributor role, and then I come over here, my Jenkins service principal, and then I save this. So we're really sure that it can do everything within this subscription. So I think we're ready. I think pretty much our resources are ready. So we now need to focus. We now need to put our focus on the Jenkins server. So the next thing we're going to do is we want to install Docker. We actually want to install Docker on the terminal here, so that the Jenkins server can use Docker on the terminal. So let's look for okay, this is for Kubernetes. Okay, so we can use this to install these instructions to install Docker. So let's do this. And then any old, I don't want to think there are old versions, so let's go straight to install. Say yes, so it can go on to install. Okay, so and then let's start Docker. Yep, and that is completed. Now there's one more thing that we also need to do. We need to install KubeCtl. So we're going to grab that from here. So that's installed. And then we're going to make it executable. And then we're going to move the binary into our path. And then we're going to check to see that it's working. Yeah, it works. So that's KubeCtl install. KubeCtl is a tool that we use in interacting with our cluster. Now, if you do KubeCtl describe all, you see that it really cannot find anything. Then KubeCtl, let's say get pods, you see it still cannot find anything, error. Now the reason is that as we are right now, we don't have any connection with the Kubernetes cluster that has been created when we run it on Visual Studio Code. Now if you do KubeCtl here instead, KubeCtl describe all, you see that works because we have the connection to the Kubernetes server that is running AKS cluster that is running on Microsoft Azure. Now the way we're going to make that connection is this. We're going to run a few of these commands here. So come over here. So we're going to try to log into the subscription. Let's do Control C here. Let's do a login. Just trying to be cheeky here. Open URL. Yeah, I got it. So we'll put in the code, and then we'll do a next. And then we'll pick the right sub. We'll pick this account. Yeah. So, and that's done. Then let's come over here and set the subscription. So we're going to set the subscription. So we are very sure now that we're talking to the right subscription. Now we're not going to run any of this because these objects definitely already exist. What we're going to do is to get the credentials. So we need these credentials. The moment we get these credentials, we're able to talk to the Kubernetes cluster. You see, so we have the credentials now. So if we then go back to do KubeCtl describe all, you see we have the same outcome here. Endpoints 51, 124, 5166. Endpoints 51, 124, 5166. So you see now that we are able to talk to the Kubernetes cluster right now from the Ubuntu server. Now the next thing we're going to do is run a bunch of commands. Now there is some hiccup between Docker and this version of Ubuntu, so we need to run a bunch of commands to ensure that Docker is going to run successfully. And this is what, in fact, I think what we should do. Let's go back to Jenkins and then try to set our Jenkins up. Let's try to set our Jenkins up, and then we'll move. Now, the next thing we want to do is look at credentials. We need to look at the credentials and see what's going on. So remember we put in the service principal the other time, so it set it up for us nicely. Let's go into it. Let's do an update here. So remember we keyed this in as a subscription, the client ID, the secret, and the tenant ID. So the way you know that this is correct is just do verify service principal. So it successfully verified the service principal. So let's go back to global credentials. So let's add, we're going to add a few more credentials. We're going to add a credential for Docker Hub. Yeah, for the Docker Hub. So let's put Docker Hub credentials. Yeah, Docker Hub credentials, and that will be this one. So that's done. And then we're going to add one more for the container registry. Now for the container registry, what we need to do is go back into the portal, ACR Jenkins Azure. Let's go to access keys and let's enable this one so we can get some keys. So this is going to be the username. That's going to be the username. And then the password will be this one. We'll pick this first one. So that will be the password. Now we need to put in an ID. Let me look for the ID that we used for the Docker. Yeah, this is the ID that we used. So we just put this ID in. And that'll be okay. So we have our credentials set up. The service principal talks to the cluster for us. This talks to Docker Hub for us, and this talks to the container registry for us. So the next thing we want to do is create a project. So let's call these Docker test, or let's call it microservices test, and let's choose a pipeline project, and let's click on OK. So when we get in here, we are going to use GitHub hook trigger, and over here we're going to use a pipeline script from source control management. We're going to do git, and then we'll look for the URL on this one. This one we'll change this branch to Jenkins, and then we go over here to get the URL. Yeah, so that's the URL for the project, and put it in here, and put it in here. Oh yeah, so yeah, so that looks okay. Yeah, microservices. So apply and save. And what we also want to do now is set up the webhook. So the way we do that is go to the Jenkins server, get his IP address, and go into settings, webhooks, edit, and change this IP address. So pull request and pushes, and then update the webhook. And let us test this webhook to be sure that it's working. We deliver. Yeah, so it works. 200, response 200. So it works. Sunday the 16th, 7:24. So the webhook is working, everything is working fine. And what we want to do now, let's have a quick look at the Jenkins file to be sure that we're okay to go. Jenkins. Let's go to the right branch, Jenkins. Azure Service Principal, resource group is okay. Yeah, all this should be okay. So let's trigger a build and see what happens. Let's trigger a build. Build now. So let's have a look at the console output and see what's going on. So the checkout happened, okay. Straight away we have a failure, and this is the failure. It says it cannot connect to the Docker daemon, and that is what we're going to resolve now. This is an issue between Jenkins and Ubuntu and Docker. So we're going to execute a bunch of instructions to rectify this, and we're going to be doing that within the terminal. So the first thing we're going to do is sudo GASSWD -a Jenkins Docker. So we added Jenkins to the group Docker, and then the next thing we want to do is cd usr, then go to library, then go to systemd, and then we're going to make directory I think we need a lot of power for that, so make directory system, and then we'll go into system, and then we go let's just use maximum power, docker.service. Yeah, so we're going to insert a bunch of instructions here. Exec start is equal to usr bin docker, then daemon minus h unix :// and then minus h tcp : / localhost :2375. Okay, so we escape and then we save it. So it's saved up, and the next thing we're going to do is to get this whole thing restarted. So system CTL reload. Oh, okay. Let's break that process. Just run it with full powers. So that works. Then sudo again, system CTL restart Docker. So we're trying to restart Docker. So that's done. And then also restart the service. Service Jenkins restart. Okay, so we're going to attempt this build again and see what happens. Yeah, it's kind of restarted Jenkins, so we need to get back in again. So let's log in. Okay, we're in. All right, so let's build now and see what happens. Hooray. So we got past this stage now, obviously. So what it's doing here, it's pushing that build, it's pushing that image into the Docker hub. If you look at the Jenkins file here, so it's running this stage, and what it's doing is pushing it into the Docker hub, and I'll show you when it's done. Yeah, because this is the first push, so it's going to push the whole lot in. So yeah, let's have a look at the logs and see how it's doing. Yeah. Oh, it's actually still building. Yeah. See what's going on social media. Now, let's see. Still building. Okay, let's see. So it's actually on this stage here, this one here. So once it's done with this one, it's going to build the remaining 4 services as well. And then we're experimenting with another build, which this time is going to go into the Azure Container Registry. Console output. Okay, yeah, it's making progress now. Good. So it's restoring the NuGet packages for this projects. If you know a little bit about C# and .NET, so it's restoring the NuGet packages so it can do a build within the image of this project. So we've got 13 steps on the Docker file. So this is okay. It's gone to the 7th step now. Yeah, these ones are going to be a bit quicker. Yeah, so the first push for each of these images takes more time, but subsequent pushes are a lot quicker. So, and this is going on right on the Jenkins server. So as soon as we get this first push done, we're going to look at the Docker Hub and see what it's done. Right. So it's pushed it up. So let's go to Docker and see. Do I have Docker open? No, I'm not sure I do. Okay. Let's check. Docker. Yeah, Docker Hub. All right, so we did check VAT ID. Let's look for that. Yeah, check VAT ID. And let's look for the tags. I can't seem to find that here. Oh, latest. Okay, typed it as latest. So let's look for the container. Check VAT ID. Yeah. Okay, let's see how the build is going. Yeah, the build is still going on fine. Slash feedback latest. Let's look at the Jenkins file. Okay. Oh, I see what's going on. It's going to do all the builds first, and then it's going to push. It's going to push the images right after. So the pushes have not yet been done. It's just the build going on. So let's see how far we've gone. Get rich Mongo. Yeah. Perhaps maybe I should have just done one service. Just one rather than all 5 services. But the good thing is that we'll see all the 5 services deployed onto our Kubernetes cluster. And we'll be able to see the complete flow through the pipeline, all the way from a source code change to a complete deployment onto the Kubernetes cluster. Yeah, so this is running on. Let's see how we're doing for time. About 46 minutes. I think we should be done within the hour. So let's have a look at the pipeline itself. See, so build fallback, build get rates, Mongo. So we actually have 5 services. So this is the 4th one being built, and then one more, and then we'll start pushing up to the registries. So let's have a look at the logs again. Console output. Yeah, it's making good progress. So that's step 12. Awesome. So this is going to be the last one to be built today. Let's see. So you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 services. So the 5th one is being built now. Let's have a look at the logs, the console output. Yep. Yeah, so that's awesome. In the meantime, let's have a look at our resources. So this is the resource group that holds everything that we're doing business with, which means that after this demo, once I do delete resource group, we're going to destroy all these resources. So let's have a look at our container registry. This is where images are going to be stored, the container where images are going to be stored. Repositories, we don't have anything yet because nothing has been pushed up yet. And then let's go to the cluster, the Kubernetes cluster. So this is the cluster here. We have only one node pool. That's the default, one node pool. And then if we go into node pools, the default node pool, which is node pool 1, we have one node count. That's one machine. So if you click on this, we have a skill set of just one machine, B2S. And also, networking, there isn't much to be seen there. That's what we have for networking. And if we go again into the registry, container registry, and look into the access control, and look into the role assignment, you can see straight away there my Jenkins service principal. My Jenkins service principal, you can see that now. This is the one we set up from the subscription. So these two really, in fact, we can do away with this one now. Yeah, so my Jenkins service principal covering the entire subscription. Now let's see how this is doing. Oh, so we're pushing now already. So let's go to Docker. Let's find Docker. Where are you, Docker? Yeah, this is Docker. So let's find the repository, tags. You see a minute ago. So latest and tag 2 all done, both of them done a minute ago. Then let's go over here. Let's go to repositories. Let's go to the first one that was done. Check VAT ID. Let's go to the tags. See latest, which was done a minute ago, and image 2, which was also done a minute ago. Why do we have image 2 and we don't have an image 1? I'll explain that to you. If you come over to microservices test, that number is being derived from the build sequence. So this build failed, so we don't have anything pushed up. This build is passing, so we have a number 2 being attached as tags to the images that we're pushing up. So being pushed to the Docker Hub. Not only that, we now have these images pushed up to the container registry in Azure. So let's go to the container registry. Let's go to repositories. So you can see we've got 5 repositories here already. Check VAT ID, latest 2. Feedback, latest 2. Look at the time, 7:42. Get app info, latest 2. So there are 2 tags there. Get rates, Mongo, latest 2. There are 2 tags there. So it seems to be going on okay. So the next one we're going to do is the Kubernetes cluster. Now the Kubernetes cluster has been deployed, and it appears that our build has succeeded. So let's go over here. Let's go into the logs. Let's go right to the bottom. So we see here that we've had a successful Kubernetes deployment. So let's look at the deployment here. So these are the logs that were generated as a result of the deployment. So how do we test out this deployment? Let's go to the Ubuntu server and do KubeCtl get deployment. So we see here the deployment here. We set up a replica count of 2 for each of those deployments, and see 2 pods available for each of those deployments. Get pods. So you can see check VAT ID is running on 2 pods. Feedback is running on 2 pods. 2 pods, 2 pods, 2 pods. Then let's go to services. Yeah, so now this is interesting. Check VAT ID. For us to launch it, we need to use what we call the external IP address. External IP address. Let's copy it and come over here. And boom, that's the service. It's running. So we can test out the service using a fake VAT number. So it's connecting to HMRC's website, and it's come back that the VAT number I put in is not valid, false, and this is the response. So the services are working, and we can pick up another service again. Let's call it get rates. No, not get rates. Get rates is an internal service. Okay, so let's do get rates Mongo. This is an external service. Let's do this. It's an external service. Copy. Come over here. Boom, and it runs. Get rates. So if you do get rates, let's try it out. Execute. You should get a whole big massive JSON come through. See, these are VAT rates for all the countries in the world. So you see our services are working. all fully deployed. Now this one, this get rates Mongo calls out to get rates. And that's why you see this get rates is an internal service. It's not exposed to the outside world. So if you copy this IP address and put it here, see, that's not going to work. So that's our CI and CD pipeline completed. So the next thing we want to verify is that a code change will, first thing I want to do is let me cut out the latest tag here. Then let me cut out the latest tag here. So let me cut out the latest tag here. So check VAT ID, nothing. Feedback, nothing. Get app info. Cut out the latest tag here. Then for the fourth one, let me cut out the latest tag. Yeah, because I want these tags redeployed. Then get rates Mongo. Let's cut out the latest tag here. So that's done. So now let's go to the source code and make a slight change. VAT. And let's make a slight change to the source code. Let's go to check VAT ID. Check VAT ID. Let's go to the controllers. Let's go to the VAT toolbox controllers. Okay, that's not. Let's go to check VAT ID. Let's go to the startup. Yeah, the startup file. And let's edit this. Let's say on Jenkins. On Jenkins. So those are changes that we made. So we're committing directly to the Jenkins branch. And it's all committed. Let's see what happens here. Microservices test. See, it's picked it up automatically and it's triggered a build. One commit. Update startup.cs. You see that? So now this is going to move a lot quicker than it did earlier on. Let's see. Yeah, so you can see it moved quicker. Now all these are moving 1 second, 1 second. See, this moved 34 seconds. This moved 4 minutes. So you see it's moving a lot quicker now. So now it's pushing to Docker Hub. And you can tell why it's moving a lot quicker. This one's moved a lot quicker because there was no change to them. Now this one comparably the same. Now you see this one moved a lot quicker because there was actually no change to the source code. So you see this is moving a lot quicker as well. Yeah, you can see that it's flying through all the stages now. So now it's pushing to container registry on Azure. Check VAT ID. So if we go to the container registry, check VAT ID. So you got latest and got the build number 3. Yeah, get services. So the services are still running and the pods are there. And let's do replica set. See, replica set, this is the desired state 2 and there's the current state 2. So if one pod fails, it will create another pod to bring it up to the desired state. So let's see how the deployment is going. The deployment is all completed. Let's see. Services. Get pods. Okay. I have a sneaky feeling. Okay, let's copy this one out and run it. Oh, okay, it's not updated yet, but we're definitely sure that the updated version is sitting in the container registry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this deployment. Delete deployment. Check VAT ID. And then I'm going to delete the services, the service, just for that microservice. And then we're just going to, now there's another way we can deploy KubeCtl. Apply -f actually slash oh, we have not even pulled the source code down, so we cannot even do that. I think we'll just rather trigger the build again. Let's trigger the build so we can have a redeployment of the check VAT. Let's see. Build now. So we just triggered a build with no changes. We expect it to fly through the blocks again. Yeah, which it's doing. So we've been able to use a code change to trigger a build on the Jenkins server. It does a Docker build, pushes the image into the Azure Container Registry and into the Docker Hub, and then also grabs the image from the Azure Container Registry and puts it into the Kubernetes cluster. So, and that's what we're going to see. So we've been able to build a CI/CD pipeline, deploying 5 microservices all the way from a code change into the Kubernetes cluster, and we can see it running. Okay, so let's have a look at our cluster again. Get services. So you see it's recreated the service now. 15 seconds. We're waiting for an IP address. Get pods. So you see the pods were created just 25 seconds ago. And then let's see if we can do get replica set 34 seconds ago. And then let's do get deployment 41 seconds ago. So let's see if we can get an IP address. Still waiting for the IP address. Yeah. Still waiting for an IP address. Yeah. Can take a while for these IP addresses to come through. Meanwhile, while waiting for that, let's have a look at a few other things. Yeah, so we've got the tags here. You can see 4.3, latest 4.3. Yeah, the reason is that I'm actually deploying latest, and the reason for that is Jenkins does not have a way, except if I go into mscripts and those other tools, of doing an in-script replacement. I'll show you what I mean. Now, if you go into this one here and go into the manifest, and let's say go into check vatid.yaml, you'll see here that I set it to latest. Now on Azure DevOps, you don't need this. You leave this out. And what Azure DevOps will do is automatically attach the build number to this when it's pushing it into the container registry. And that's really very slick. So I think my next assignment will be to find out how to automate that process of attaching whatever number that we want to attach to this, and also getting it deployed automatically during the AKS deployment phase. In the meantime, we should have our IP address back. Yes, we do. So let's have a look at this. Copy. You see, on Jenkins. You see, on Jenkins. So our change has been propagated all the way from source control into Kubernetes. So within 1 hour, 8 minutes, we've been able to build a Jenkins server. We've been able to create several resources all the way from container registry, resource group, all the way to a Kubernetes cluster. We've been able to assign a service principal to run on the cluster, to connect to the registry, and to also run on the Jenkins server. So we've done all this pretty much within the hour, and we've had a few green builds, successful builds, and pretty much that is how to use a Jenkins server on Ubuntu to create a CI/CD pipeline for a bunch of microservices, all the way from code checking into deployment onto AKS. So thanks for watching. See you guys again. Bye-bye.